Welcome and greetings to all. I am Shen Long Pen Dragon, the Lore Master. So I'll include my usual disclaimer here. I don't own any of the images or the story in this video. The credit for these all belong to their original sources. So today we are going to be starting a new series. I'm going to be covering the legends of ancient Egypt this time. Ancient Egypt is, as you know, old civilization. It is probably the oldest civilization in recorded history that we know of, and as such it's filled with fascinating legends and stories, many of which you probably do know about and some you may not. So I hope you enjoy this series, ladies and gentlemen. I will be doing 5 videos on it to begin with, and I may add some more later on. So again, I do hope you enjoy the series, and without further ado, let's actually move on. So the story I'm going to be doing for you today is the Legend of the Unopened Scroll. I hope you'll enjoy it. I first heard the story when I was very small, maybe about 5 or 6, and ever since I've really quite enjoyed this tale. It's been one of intrigue for me ever since I was a small boy, and I hope you'll find it interesting. So again, let's now move on and actually talk about the story. It is said that ancient Egypt is a gift from the Nile, and rightly so, for without its waters, the land would be as barren and lifeless as the desert. Each year, the Nile floods its banks, laying down fertile silt across the land, allowing the Egyptians to grow crops and keep animals. So it is said that ancient Egypt is a gift from the Nile. Egypt was renowned for its mighty monuments and impressive temples, and most of all for its tombs. For the Valley of the Kings is one of many mysteries for dozens of people worldwide. Egypt was an empire built on blood and warfare, its cities and monuments built upon the backs of slave labour, and it was under the rule of the pharaoh that this empire flourished. At all times the pharaoh surrounded himself with a cohort of shamans and priests, supposedly skilled in the arcane arts. This story is of one such priest. One day, the pharaoh was holding court in his palace. He listened to the petitions of his people, eager to hear their thoughts on the country and how he might better their lives. But not all such things were as they seemed, for on that day a stranger appeared. He had journeyed from the deep south, from Ethiopia. It is said that he was a shaman or a priest in some kind, and that his skill with the arcane arts was unparalleled. As the shaman bowed to the pharaoh, he presented something. Clutched in the Ethiopian's hand was a scroll of papyrus. The scroll was sealed, and as the pharaoh took it, he wondered why on earth this scroll had been brought to him. "Great Pharaoh of Egypt," the shaman said, "I have come to issue a challenge. I wish to prove that the men of Ethiopia are just as skilled, if not more so, than the great priests of Egypt." Intrigued, the pharaoh looked at the scroll, then back to the shaman. "Pray tell, shaman of Ethiopia, what is this challenge? I am eager to hear it." "Great Pharaoh, that scroll is sealed for a reason. I would like to issue a challenge to your priests. Any one of them that can read that scroll correctly without opening it shall gain my respect, and I will admit that the great priests of Egypt are indeed the most skilled in the known world. The Pharaoh turned to his high priest. We have one such man in the palace today. My priest, I offer you to take up this challenge on behalf of Egypt. Unwilling to disappoint the Pharaoh, the priest took the scroll and accepted the challenge. That night, the priest despaired in the comforting arms of his wife. He had no such ability to read an unopened scroll, and disappointing the Pharaoh could mean certain death, or even exile. The Pharaoh could even relieve him of his position, and as a result, his family would be left in the poor streets, unable to eat. Despairing, the priest wondered what on earth could he do. Do not fear, my darling. You will find a way. You are the Pharaoh's greatest priest, and I believe that you can do it. The priest shook his head. There are no secret arts or spells in the Empire that I know of that can allow me to read such a scroll. It seems impossible. I must pray to the great gods, Amun-Ra, Lord of the Sun, and Thoth, Lord of Wisdom. I must pray and hope that they guide my sight to the truth. It was then that hope found a home in the priest's heart. The door opened, flooding the dim room with light. It was then that the priest's young son walked into the room. I have heard of your challenge, father. I am impressed you would take it on. The priest patted his son's head affectionately. If it were only good news, my lad. I have no ability to read such a scroll. I must pray and hope that a way is revealed to me. The young boy cocked his head. Well then, father, if you are unable to read the scroll, then allow me to do so. I am confident I have the ability. The priest cocked his head. Could it be true? Could his young son really have such an ability? Well, he had no way of knowing. The priest nodded. I will pray that you are right, my boy, and hope that the Pharaoh is not ashamed of us. 3 days later, the Ethiopian shaman returned to the Pharaoh's palace. Great Pharaoh, I have returned at the appointed time, and I am eager to hear your priest's deliberations upon what is written in the scroll. Please allow him to step forward and announce it to the court. The priest stepped forward, taking his young son with him proudly. Great shaman of Ethiopia, you are indeed skilled, but my son is more so. It will be he that announces what is written on this scroll, not I. The Pharaoh looked intrigued. You mean to tell me, priest, that your son can read this unopened scroll? He claims he can, great Pharaoh. Interesting. It would appear that your boy has surpassed you. The priest beamed with pride. And if he is correct, nothing would make me prouder than to see my young son surpass me in every way. The shaman inclined his head. The son of the priest or the priest himself, it matters not which one takes up the challenge. Very well. Young man, tell me what you believe is written on the scroll. The boy cleared his throat. It is quite simple, shaman. There is nothing written upon this scroll. There was a pause, and then the shaman broke the seal upon the scroll. The scroll was indeed blank. There was not a single hieroglyph or picture upon it. No words, no markings, nothing. just a blank sheet of papyrus. The pharaoh sat back on his throne smugly. Black Wolf of the South, it would appear that victory belongs to Egypt this day. The Ethiopian smiled. White Wolf of the North, it would appear so. I am humbled by this young boy's skill and ability. It is evident that the priests of Egypt are as skilled as legend says. I am eager to hear what you have planned for me. The pharaoh waved his hand casually. You are here as a guest, not as an enemy or a slave. You are free to go home whenever you wish. The shaman bowed. Thank you, Pharaoh. I will travel home and take news of the skill of the priests of Egypt. I bid you all farewell. And with that, the Ethiopian left Egypt, never to return again. Thus ends the legend of the Unopened Scroll. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then please remember to like and subscribe for more lore, myths, legends, and stories. Just to put some of the terminology I used earlier into a little bit of context, the terms White Wolf of the North and Black Wolf of the South are actually terms that were used in the original story, and they are actually nom de guerres made to show respect to a fellow warrior or a fighter. That's where the wolf part of the name comes from. So whenever you refer to, especially in medieval or ancient times, a warrior as a wolf, it was to show that they are fierce, they are feared, and as a result it's a mark of respect for their skill and tenacity. The colour denominations, white and black, was primarily because at the time ancient Egyptians had a very much lighter skin tone than the Ethiopians did, so they would often refer to each other as white wolves or black wolves just to help identify, because you do have to bear in mind that at the time Egypt wasn't called Egypt and Ethiopia wasn't called Ethiopia. Exactly what they called themselves, well, I personally don't really know because I don't speak either Egyptian or Ethiopian, and again you do have to bear in mind that over the centuries the languages will have changed drastically. So again, just a little bit of history trivia there for you. I hope you found that small tidbit interesting. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I am Shenlong Pendragon, and until next time, remember, knowledge is power.